Well, welcome, Prescott, and welcome to another Prescott E-News Prescott Talk Show. My name's Glenn Martin, and I'm your host. And this is actually part 2 of our interview with Phil Goode, who is running for the mayor for the city of Prescott. Thank you again, Phil, for coming in and making the time.
Pleasure to be here.
We're trying to keep
always.
you in that time zone. I know you've got a lot of venues and meetings that you go to. You know, we talked quite a bit about water, and we talked about growth, and we talked a little bit about infrastructure and what it takes to keep snow off the road, and some of the things that the city has to provide. But there's other things that are going on in this campaign, and one of them is transparency. And I'd like to go down that road a little bit, and I'll tell you just a real quick story. About a year ago, we had we were asking the city of Prescott to give us an ordinance for red flag laws, where no matter what the federal government came in and did, we didn't use the city of Prescott assets to violate certain constitutional laws. And I went up to speak, and after I got done saying, welcome, my name's so-and-so, where I live, and heck, the darn red light was on.
That's right.
I barely got to say anything, which, I'm sure they didn't want to hear it anyway, but they voted it all down. So what say you?
Well, I've seen a pretty significant and clear change in how the council and the mayor respects and solicits public opinion. In my opinion, we have an obligation as elected representatives to listen to the people and consider their concerns. And that's an obligation we have in our representative republic. So even though you'll have members of the community that you may not agree with, you still have an obligation to listen and consider their concerns. So I've always advocated for more public input, and to make sure that the public input that does get listened to is not restricted to a predetermined 3 minutes. We didn't have that red light timing bar in front of the council years ago. No. One thing I learned in my professional career, that sometimes the very best ideas come from the most unlikely sources. So if you cut yourself off from listening to only sources that you agree with and cut yourself off from the other ones, you may really damage your ability to make the best decisions for the community. So I've advocated for a removal of that red light bar, because it can be very intimidating for people. How many people have studied and prepared to make a very well-documented presentation within 3 minutes? And just because the red light comes on and you're cut off, sometimes you never have a chance to make your point. Right. So you have to be able to allow information to be presented, and that's something that I would do as mayor. Second thing is, I would restore the call to the public. So your reference to that Second Amendment resolution, and it turned out to be a watered-down proclamation within the city. Right. If anybody had gone to the meetings that the county had put together, there were literally hundreds and hundreds of people who had come in and wanted to be able to make their point. So being able to have a call to the public, even though if it's not agendized, action can't be taken at the time, you do have an opportunity to present your concerns to your elected representatives, and then be able to have some consideration. So I would restore that, and I think it's our obligation to have a more transparent community of elected officials. We used to have a council chamber that was literally almost full every time the council met. And when issues were being discussed, people would get in line in the middle aisle, and they had a chance to address the council. Now that doesn't exist anymore. And because of that, we have very, very little public presence in the council chambers. And I think that creates much more lack of trust, and lack of confidence in the decisions that are made by the council that impact the community. So that's one of the primary concerns that I'd like to be able to restore, that trust in government, and it has to become a trust and a respect for our community. There's something called we the people.
Yeah, yeah. One thing
That's
I
where
noticed
the
is
sovereignty. That's where the sovereignty belongs in our government.
right.
And once you cut that off, you become almost a totalitarian state.
Agree.
Right.
Well, one thing I also noticed, Phil, is there seems to be more and more executive sessions. Now, I don't know if that's just me or I understand that you have to have executive sessions, but it seems like they become more frequent. Is that
Oh, there's been a dramatic increase in the number of executive sessions over the last couple of years. A lot of it is focused on this ongoing complex negotiations for the Arizona Eco Development annexation, and rightly so, even though I felt that the parties that were negotiating were really not negotiating in good faith. Otherwise, we could have moved these negotiations along much more quickly, and it wouldn't have taken us 3 years to get to the point where we were finally able to make a decision. But if more of that could have been in some form of a public forum, I think it was pretty clear that a lot of the groups that were very interested and involved, like the Save the Dells group, were able to actually push those negotiations in a much more acceptable manner and not have to solely rely on the executive negotiating team that was working with the developer, and then we had 3 members of the council that were working to negotiate those terms. So with less executive sessions, I think, again, it would have a lot more faith in the community at large, that decisions are being made in an open forum that they can consider and be assured that the decisions are going to be better for the community. I mean, we got to the point where this 30-day requirement that the community understand what the terms of this development agreement, we didn't even have a final development agreement until the night before we voted on annexing this. And I felt that the community should have had at least 30 days to be able to look at the final form and be able to make their comments and understand it. But, I was only
you're
one vote out of that.
Yeah. Every time I see the vote and I see
So
that one, I know who it was.
That's very, very important.
Yeah.
And then when you add to that the political discourse that we're involved in at the moment, rather than having a clear debate and a consideration of issues, the political environment has degraded to the point where we hardly even recognize these types of debates that are going on, or at least the claims that are being made. I mean, I go back quite a few years in the elections of city officials, and I've never seen the kind of charges that are being made that are clearly unjustified. They're not accurate. They're misrepresented. And we deserve much better in our community. Yeah. We should be able to put the issues out between competing candidates and be able to describe and debate those and have the public decide who has the best vision, who has the most likelihood of being able to put that division in effect for our future. And what we're dealing with now is just not only is it disrespectful for our community, but it also, think about what does that mean for the future? It means that anybody in the community that really has a legitimate concern and wants to serve our citizens now are going to be second guessing whether they even want to step into this type of environment, because they're not going to risk their own reputation, maybe their business, their family, to be subject to these types of specious and smear tactics. That's really I can't tell you how displeased I am with that type of
Well, it's got
campaign.
to affect you both at home and what you're doing, because, I mean, what I see come in the mailbox, Phil, and I don't want to really harp on this because you really run a good, clean campaign above board. But what I've seen come in are just blatant lies. I've known you for 7 years,
yeah.
dude. I mean, I know where you stand in fire and police. I knew where you were at
Right.
443. And I think one of the worst ones were, the worst attack was the attack on your military service when they took an airbrush and they brushed out your military
Pins, right.
and made your face look sad or whatever. And, that's just lower than, as my dad used to say, than, well, you know what? Because when a guy goes out and serves his country honorably, you wear those pins with pride. And for someone to do that, whether they're friends of the mayors or the developers, of course, they're all connected, because you never see any of these hit pieces on the
Well,
mayor.
you got to realize that proudly, Prescott has arguably one of the highest percentages of veterans of any city in the United States. A lot of people say, wow, I didn't have any idea.
Yeah.
We have almost 18% of our residents are veterans.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that attracted me to this community many years ago, because we value and respect and honor our veterans. And to anybody who's seen me anywhere in the community, if I have a coat on, you can guarantee that I'm wearing my American flag, or my Arizona and American flag, or my American flag with my veteran designation on it. And I always wear my combat infantry badge.
Yeah.
So to take a Photoshop or an airbrush to take that out is a direct disrespect for our veteran community. And it's just despicable, quite frankly.
I put it on Facebook, and even my friends in California who are veterans, they don't have anything to do with this race.
Right.
They FaceTimed me and they said, what in the world? How can, they were outraged, and these guys were combat veterans, Bronze Stars, awardees. But I don't know. Like I said, it's just, that was just the lowest of lows. And I know, I know there's difference of opinions on different issues.
Right.
When Rowley was running against Mary Beth Wren for BOS, I like Rowley. And Rowley and I would sit and talk. Now, I was on the campaign for
Right.
Mary Beth. And Rowley would talk about, Glenn, when we were running for mayor, the person that was running with me, we'd carpool together at the venues. We weren't, we weren't haters, and we were, everything was above boards, and we talked about issues. And things started moving away from that, And like you said, we'll get to the point where we have good people who just decide, I don't want to put myself through that. And it's
if you're not
it's just a
prepared
shame.
to state your issues and defend them, and you have to resort to that type of attack politics, it's just a reflection on the fact that they don't have the issues to be able to propose and have the facts behind them. It's just very, very unfortunate, and I hope that the community at large realizes that these types of politics are really below the quality that we have in Prescott, and that we want to be able to be proud of. So, you know me, I'm a constitutional conservative, and I've lived those principles. So I don't have to worry about pandering for votes or anything else. I have an unwavering faith in the Constitution, and I'll use those principles when if I'm allowed to have your support and your faith in who is going to be able to lead this community into the future, then you can bet your bottom dollar that I'll apply those principles, both now and in the future. And if you've watched my voting record in the past, you know I'll stand up for what's right. And I'll fight for the taxpayers and make sure that our future is assured as a community. So I will make that appeal to you now. On August 3rd, I hope that you'll support me with your vote, and I'll proudly lead this community into the future with a community that will restore our reputation and something that we can all be proud of.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Phil.
Glenn.
I really appreciate your time. I know you're pushed for time, and we could go on to other subjects,
Sure.
taxation, and we could kind of dig into some of this stuff because there's a lot out there, folks, and a lot of things that need to be addressed. And hopefully, again, you'll consider Phil to lead us through that. So with that, again, we're going to close the show up as we always do, thanking our current and prior serving military. Thank you, Phil. Thank you for our law enforcement and firefighters. We're 100% behind you.
Absolutely.
And we absolutely will never support defund the police. It's just not part of our DNA. Phil and I are constitutional conservatives. We believe in the Constitution. And like he said, if we do what the Constitution shows us how to run, we will be able to save this republic. We'll be able to save our cities and our communities.
That's right.
With that, thank you, Prescott. Appreciate your time. Next up, Quan Nguyen. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks.